Bill, how are you?
I'm doing well. Listen, an alert. I just got an alert on my phone. The Mets have reached their hit quota for May. So it's going to be a little slow the next couple of weeks.
Why do they score 12 runs one day and can't even muster one run the next day? It'd be nice if they could spread it around a little bit.
Unbelievable.
All right, since you've opened this can of worms, and I'll be quick here. You know, Ryan, you remember all the talk about the Mets training staff, and they couldn't diagnose, and they didn't know how to treat, and that's why everyone got hurt all the time, so we changed them.
Yep.
Yesterday, there were conflicting reports, I believe originated by the team, whether or not Cespedes had a quad injury or a hip flexor, and whether or not it was going to require him to go on the DL. And Sandy Alderson was saying one thing, and Eddie Coleman, who is like the Mets beat reporter, he's been with the team forever, covering the team, had a source inside saying, no, actually my notes say it's the quad, not the hip, and it's not DL, but what the heck?
Well, and meanwhile, you've got everybody questioning Callaway on managerial decisions, and I don't know. There's a lot of pointing fingers going on right now.
Well, he looked like a genius the first month when every kind of weird managerial decision he made came out perfect. But to get back to the Cespedes thing, Jeff, they actually pulled a guy out of the game in Las Vegas last night, expecting to pull Cespedes on the DL, and then just left that guy in Vegas. So it's clearly. And they don't know what's going on right now.
And this is the second time that this has happened with Cespedes. If you remember a couple of weeks ago, he was not expected to play because of a hip injury or something. And then all of a sudden, I'm watching the game. There he is. He was
going to miss three days. He missed the whole series, and then he played that night against Atlanta.
So is that Cespedes saying, listen, I'm fine. I'm going to play anyway. I don't know.
Well, somewhere at McCarran International Airport, there's a Mets prospect at the penny slots right now, just waiting for his plane.
Yeah.
I mean, my biggest concern about the Mets right now is everybody else in the NL East seems to be younger and getting better, and the Mets seem to be older and getting worse.
Yeah.
So the future does not look bright right now.
What'd you think of the Matt Harvey trade?
I think it was time for him to go.
He was a problem. I think he was a problem in the locker room. There's a morale problem with him.
Yeah, but I just think he doesn't have anything left. You know, he might have a couple of nice starts here and there. He's definitely not the player he once was. These injuries just have ravaged him. I think even the second injury more than the Tommy John situation because, you know, pitchers come back from Tommy John.
Yeah.
But this other injury seemed to be just too much for him. And it was in his head. He didn't seem to want to do the work to come back, and the bright lights of New York were a little bit too much for him. I mean, I hope he can rebound in Cincinnati, but I think it's time for him to go. And if they, you know, it's amazing to think that the Mets, you know, from where Matt Harvey was, the best they could get was a catcher that hits 220. But that's where we are, I guess.
Yeah, boy. I've had such high hopes for this season. I still do, by the way, because I'm an optimist.
It's not over.
I still have high hopes that the president's going to meet with Kim Jong-un, and they're going to be like, you know what? We North Koreans we don't want you to give us anything. We're going to give up all of our nuclear program because we don't want to be annihilated. Forget the fact that we have our missiles pointed at South Korea and Japan. So what are you thinking here, Ryan?
Well, I think if anything, the developments from yesterday showed us that we were maybe a little too naive to think that this could happen as easily as it seemed to be coming together. That, you know, that North Korea wasn't just going to surrender everything and, you know, be open to this summit and then just give up everything and make everything better again. That this is an unpredictable and unreliable regime. And so, you know, it wouldn't take much for them to suddenly get cold feet about this summit. I mean, it might be possible that Kim Jong-un sees that he's giving everything away at this point and losing this, you know, limited base of power that he has in his own country, and decided that maybe he needs to saber rattle a little bit to get more out of this deal. I mean, the big question here for President Trump is, you know, how seriously are they willing to back off some of the things that Kim Jong-un cares about in order to get this done? And this is where diplomacy happens, right? And diplomacy is not Donald Trump's strength. His strength is like, give me everything or I'm pulling out. And this obviously is going to need to be a little fine-tuned here in order to make it happen. You know, right now the White House is still planning that this summit is going to take place, but given what we heard yesterday, it would not be a surprise at all if all of a sudden they just scrap the whole thing.
Wow. It does seem, though, I mean, all the talk up to this point has been that they have to give up their entire nuclear program. We have to have full access. The free world must have full access and verification, 100%. They must destroy all of their nuclear capabilities and research. And that's about it. We're not certainly going to be giving up anything. And I just don't know how Kim Jong-un could pull that off and remain in a position where he's respectable to the people of North Korea.
Well, and I think you're right, Bill. And I think what we saw yesterday, the reason that the North Koreans are getting cold feet is because the U.S. and the South Koreans were conducting military exercises near the North Korean border. And I think that, you're going to come to this table and Kim Jong-un is going to say to Donald Trump, I'm giving up all of this. I want your military forces out of South Korea. And this is where it gets complicated in, the Asia Pacific region, because there's another country that doesn't want United States military forces in South Korea, and that's China. And China is a big player in all of this. So, you see that Kim Jong-un made that secret trip to China. There's a North Korean delegation in China again. The idea that Xi Jinping is not playing a big role in all these negotiations, either by trying to influence President Trump, because they obviously have a good relationship. President Trump has kind of a man crush on Xi Jinping. And then the back channel with North Korea, because, the only thing that's propping the North Korean government up through all these years is these very limited resources kind of secretly being put into North Korea from China. So, the idea that this is just a North Korea thing, I think, is something that we have to be aware of, that there's a lot of other countries in this region that have an influence, particularly China, and then even further down the road, Russia, because Russia's not too far away from all of this activity. So this is way more complicated than just Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump getting into a room and hashing out a deal.
Yeah. I want to switch to the Hill here with Senate Intelligence Committee and their vote, which will be coming today on Haspel's nomination for CIA director. Looks like there's a couple of Democrats that are going to be voting for her.
Yeah, I think she's going to get confirmed by a pretty comfortable margin. The Senate Intelligence Vice Chairman, Mark Warner of Virginia, came out in support of her yesterday. Warner dithered a little bit. I don't think that him and his people were very happy with her answers during the hearing about the torture program. They wanted an outright rejection of it, which Haspel oversaw during her time in the CIA during the Bush administration. And I think Haspel was in this kind of tight spot. I think she now recognizes, looking back, that was perhaps a bad idea. But she also doesn't want to throw under the bus all these people that she worked with at the CIA during a very difficult time in American history where decisions were made based on the environment that they were in at the time. And so she sent a follow-up letter to Mark Warner saying that, yes, I do think, that these interrogation programs were wrong. We should never do them again. And that seemed to appease him a bit. And Warner, who's not up for re-election, is in, Virginia's kind of more of a blue state now. That really gives cover to all these red state Democrats that are up for re-election this year. So then they started to fall like dominoes. Joe Manchin from West Virginia had already said he was going to vote for her. But then you had Heidi Heitkamp from North Dakota, who's up for re-election. She's on the Intelligence Committee. She said she's going to vote for him as well. Joe Donnelly from Indiana. That's 4 Democratic votes right there. You might only lose one Republican, Rand Paul, who's even now kind of wavering. He asked Gina Haspel for more information, and John McCain's not going to vote. But you only need 2 Democratic votes, so that could be enough. So even if all the other Democrats don't vote for her, she should get in pretty easily. And I think you'll even going to see a couple more Democrats come over and cast a ballot in favor of her. It seems as though she's met the criteria necessary that's going to make the most senators comfortable with her confirmation.
Let's switch to John McCain here and the comments that were made about John McCain. And the White House not willing to apologize. I don't know. Why don't you just say, you know what, it was inappropriate. It shouldn't have been leaked. We apologize. The problem is, I think the president has said stuff similar to this about John McCain. So what's going to come out of this? You have Republicans kind of staying quiet right now.
There's 2 problems with this, right, Bill? The first is that this is a classic example of the Trump administration bungling what should have been a simple PR mess and gotten it over with quickly. If Kelly Sadler had publicly made an apology, within hours of that story coming out, said that she was wrong, wishes that she hadn't said it, and everyone moved on. She probably would have been able to stay in her job, and then everybody would have forgotten about it. If she waited 24 hours to make that apology and then she was fired, the White House wouldn't be talking about this anymore. But now the White House continues to defend her. She promised Meghan McCain a public apology and never made it. And so now we're into almost a week of this controversy, which in the grand scheme of things is a pretty minor controversy. But because of who John McCain is and because of what this says about the environment that exists in the White House, that a relatively low-level staffer could make a comment like that and think it was okay. What does that tell you about the environment there? And it just goes back to a president who refuses to apologize for anything. So I think, that the President Trump is probably among the camp of, we're not apologizing for this.
Yeah.
We don't have anything to apologize for. And it just creates another toxic environment. It turns the White House press briefing into all questions about this instead of the questions that they should be focused on. There's a lot that Donald Trump could be boasting about right now with North Korea and the economy, and they've picked up a couple of wins in these Senate primaries. There's all good things that his administration has talked about, but instead they're dogged by this controversy, which could have easily been wrapped up in 24 hours.
Here's a question for you. What do we know about Kelly Sadler? She's an advisor, special assistant to the president.
Yeah, so she works in the communications shop. She's not high level by any stretch of the imagination.
She has a broadcast degree.
Right, and she's also not a Trump person per se. She didn't come from the Trump orbit. She's actually someone that came into the White House under Mike Dubke, who was the very short-lived communications director at the White House, graduate of Hamilton College, I might also add.
And by the way, so is she. Kelly Sadler is a graduate of. This is where I was going with this. She's a Hamilton grad, 2002 graduate of Hamilton College.
Exactly. So she's not necessarily somebody who has a long relationship with Donald Trump. She's not Hope Hicks. She's someone that came into the Trump orbit and has now become a Trump loyalist. There's a few people in the White House that passionately defend her still. Among them is Mercedes Schlapp, who's the husband of Matt Schlapp, who runs CPAC, who's become a pretty powerful voice in the White House. She was the one that in this second meeting where Sarah Sanders basically yelled at everyone on the communications staff for this being leaked, where Mercedes Schlapp basically said that she defends Kelly Sadler. I mean, she's has endeared herself enough to this communications staff that they're willing to continue to allow this fight to go on, despite the fact that it's bringing them all this negative attention. And she's not that high level of a staffer. So, she's not like a front-facing person, though, right? She's not going to interviews on behalf of the administration or give quotes. She's more of somebody that's behind the scenes.
And who is, this is something that was said behind closed doors, and it gets out. One more thing that now out is the fact that there are guys in suits that are going around and checking everybody's cell phones. You got to drop your cell phone when you walk into the White House. All of these things are being leaked. Who is leaking this stuff?
Yeah, a great question, right, Bill? I mean, I'd be on CNN a lot more if I knew who the leakers were. I think that what this says is, and I always find this so frustrating. Let me state for the record, as a journalist, I'm very pro-leak. I think everybody should be leaking all the time. It obviously makes my job a lot easier.
Yeah.
But I think that when communication shops whine about leakers, they whine to journalists about leakers, they need to be looking at themselves. If you've got a shop where you've got people constantly leaking, that shows that there isn't a lot of trust there and that you haven't hired the right people. Listen, I can tell you I've covered a lot of administrations. Great example being Terry McAuliffe's administration when he was governor of Virginia. And I had all kinds of sources up and down the McAuliffe administration, and I could never get anything out of them, because they were loyal to him and his governorship. They weren't going to put out something before they were ready to put it out. So the fact that you have so many people willing to break that confidence, that's a problem within that administration. It's not the problem of reporters. It's not the problem of people on Twitter. Sarah Sanders needs to look in the mirror. She's the one responsible for this. And the idea that they're complaining about it and calling these people cowards, just find out who they are and get rid of them.
And get rid of them. Interesting stuff. We'll do it all over again next week. Ryan Nobles, CNN, thanks so much. We appreciate it.